Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Well, welcome everybody to a very special episode of Between Two Chairs. It's always special when we welcome a guest, and in this time around, it's someone that is very near and dear to me and to our podcast. My name is Fernando Arencibia, and with me, as always, is the incredible. Not vindictive, unvindictive, the opposite of vindictive. Sorry, guys, an inside joke. Jennifer Woolman. Jennifer, say hi.
Hello, everybody, and welcome.
Hello.
So with us today, we have Danny Figueredo, who is the co-founder. I'm going to say co-founder because he has an amazing better half, Rosa Romero, always by his side. And together they have built what is one of the top Sanguich restaurants in the world. I'm just going to name it here, Sanguich de Miami, bringing this Cuban culture elevated to the rest of the world. And there's a lot of great things that I want to say about Danny, but we'll get to it through the episode. So Danny, say hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Fernando. Nice to meet you, Jennifer. It's the first time.
Yes, nice meeting you too.
I'm really excited for this, and I couldn't be prouder to join my brother and a friend and someone that I look up to on this Between Two Chairs podcast. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. So Jennifer, you wanna?
I want to congratulate you. It's the first time we've met, so obviously I did some research. I mean, I've heard a lot about you and Sanguich from Fernando and all the great stuff that you're doing, and we're going to get into that. But I wanted to congratulate you on your success, on your Michelin Bib Gourmand rating, and your continued growth. And one of the reasons that we wanted you to come on is we get a lot of businesses that come on that are just starting out, and they want us to help them find locations. And then we have landlords who want us to find good tenants for them. So we just figured, based on your background, you would be the perfect person to have on here. We also wanted to promote your business, obviously. We're all about promoting small businesses. So if you can just give us a little bit of your background, just to introduce yourself to our listeners. Where did you grow up? What did you do before opening Sanguich? And what do you do for fun?
Well, first, I would like to thank you for even including me in that, because I don't think that I'm worthy of it. But I really appreciate you guys thinking of me and having this dialogue, and I hope that I can fulfill that mission. My name is Daniel Figueredo, and I am the co-founder of Sanguich. Rightfully so. My right hand, my partner in life, and the mother of my children is the other 50%. And like Fernando prefaced earlier, Rosa, without her, this idea of Sanguich as we know it today would just be an idea. It would be no more than a dream. So Rosa is not with us right now. She's attending to our child who's in transition for the new school year, so she was unable to attend. So she says her hellos. We incorporated in 2015. That's really where the precipice of our careers and the beginning of Sanguich. Rose and I decided that we would leave our careers and kind of do a 180, and I call it facing the sun. It was a day that we liberated ourselves from like the corporate structure, and finally we're able to do something and exercise all that experience and put it into work. Here we are today. We incorporated in 2015, and it took about a year to really mature the idea, to ensure that we were going to have an executable concept that was thoroughly studied. And then we started in increments to build what you know as Sanguich to be today.
Great. So just for people who aren't from Miami, and you're pronouncing it like the American way, but it's not spelled that way, it's Sanguich. So, yeah, for people who aren't from Miami, can you explain how it came out? Sanguich, and for our listeners, it's spelled Sanguich.
Exactly. And that's really easy, right? When you come to this country, you read these words out loud and you pronounce them with your accent. So it's sandwich, right? Is how it's spelled, Sandwich. We all know that, right? But when you pronounce it with our translating, like us as Spanish speaking citizens reading a word, it's sandwich.
Yeah, I love it.
And so it's like a lot. It's that onomatopoeia, right? Where you exactly. So that's exactly what we did. We were just like, let's just sandwich. Okay, how do you pronounce it? And we're very much like, we pronounce so much of it from the back of our throats that it was just sandwich. So that's how it was born. There's no like brainstorming session. It was just like really simple. You're like, hey, sandwich. Oh, it's pretty good. Yeah.
But I love it.
It's very.
That's what I love about it. Yeah. It's simple, but it tells a story in itself, right?
Very matter of fact. It's not. I think it's very true to our culture.
Yeah.
I love it.
Danny, we live in a city, and obviously a country, but very much a city that has an incredible entrepreneurial spirit. It runs through our veins. And most people that are entrepreneurs, they start in a different career and then they launch themselves into something that they have a passion for. So can you give us a little background of what was Rosa doing before this idea came up, your background, and how you imagine that the skill sets that both of you had developed in your earlier career was going to translate to this work?
There's two parts to that question. So the first part is let's talk about our careers. So our careers, Rosa was an executive paralegal for I think 17, 18 years. She worked for the top law firms in the country, from the Colson Hicks to the Schlesingers, and she was a litigation paralegal. So her job was to obviously help and assist their attorneys to develop the cases so that when they go to trial, they have all of their paperwork and due diligence to win the case. That's pretty much what she did, right? So she was a very crucial component to the law firms. And I was, I studied architecture, I studied engineering, textile engineering. So I was always started off as an architect. Then I kind of dropped out of college. I didn't feel it was really an adequate profession for me as much as I loved it. So I went into fashion and I, graduated with textile degree. And then I, rolled in to many aspects of the industry as fashion. I started designing, and then I felt I kind of tapped out of that. And I wanted really to explore. There was always, like you said a moment ago, Fernando, which is there's this entrepreneur spirit. And I was very young. I really didn't understand it. I just knew that it was a driving force to decide what I needed to do. And inevitably, 25 years later, it's just kind of like there's that aha moment. But I was involved in supply chain management. I was involved in distribution. I was involved with very high level strategies. And then I attribute a lot of my success to, I was working for Louis Vuitton for 4.5 years. And I was there at the time was a trade marketing director, which is essentially like a construction director. There was only two of us. And we handled the United States, Canada, Latin America. So it was a really big chunk. And our job was to take Tag Heuer, which is at that time, the number 6 watch brand in the world, to bring it up to number 2. And we were able to do it as a marketing team. We were able to do it in 2 years. And so there was at the point where I really understood what it is to take a brand from, here to here. Everything from, monetarily, what it takes in terms of marketing, what it takes in terms of production and distribution, and all those strategies that lead up to a successful rollout. And there comes a point in time where after fulfilling those obligations and doing what was necessary, I understood that I had a lot more to offer. And there was not a lot of growth. It's either become the vice president or the CEO of the business. And I hit a glass ceiling at Tag. There was nothing more you could do. And I think we all kind of knew it. And I wasn't going to be the next president because it's a French company and who wants a Cuban sitting on the French board? Let's be honest, right? I was a loudmouth, man. I was 27, 28 years old and woo! and I was colorful.
I'd like to say you still are colorful just from seeing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I guess, to kind of make this a little shorter, right? I started a fashion company. It became immensely successful. I was a top third selling neckwear vendor for Nordstrom for almost 4 years. But unfortunately, the collapse of 2008 really pulled the carpet from everyone's, solid footing. And I had to reanalyze what we were going to do. And so I met Rosa. And during that time, during that courtship, we understood our strengths. I don't think that we really had a plan. So now the second part of that question is, what was it about our, backgrounds that led to this? I think it was just that's divinity. That isn't anything I could have ever planned for. Rosa just possessed the right qualities. I possessed the right qualities. And together we understood what it was going to take to get to where we needed to get. And it really, quite frankly, was either are you in or are you out, right? There's so much at risk that you have to make the conscious decision to say, we're going to do this together, thick and thin. And she has the organizational ability. I am very much the dreamer and the driver. And I'm always pushing everything to, how should I say this? I'm unafraid of breaking the rules, and I'm not afraid of the challenges, and I'm not afraid of taking risks, so long that I know that I have a system. I have people that support me. So when things do go wrong, I have someone to lean on. And in this case, it's Rosa.
That's phenomenal. When you're crafting this concept, because you're coming in from that wealth of experience of how important marketing is to the growth of a brand and the growth of a product. But when you guys are starting, and I can imagine in your kitchen, you're testing out your recipes, what is the core of, at that moment, how do you envision what was going to be the core of the business? Is it the reimagining or the elevating of a staple really in our culture, which is the Cuban sandwich? And does it all grow from the great taste of the sandwiches, or is it just an amalgamation of all the different parts?
Well, and before you answer that real quickly, I want to know what came first? Like, you're telling me your backgrounds and that you came up with an idea. Was your idea always Sanguich, or was your idea, let's go into business for ourselves and create our own company?
No, so Fernando knows me pretty well. In 2007, when things were really good, I'm talking financially, it was just a completely different world. I was traveling 300 days a year. I was dressing some of the most important people in the world, everyone from the Prince of Jordan to the president, senators, you name them. And I had this thing called the Bastards Lunch, and they would come to my house, and it was 7 of us. And I'm a cigar smoker, and I think right before we went on live, and Fernando's asking me if you're up for a cigar later, and I'm absolutely yes, we can do it, right? These are
yeah. And I have it recorded now, so.
But now they have to find us somewhere in Miami, right? We got a little
That's right.
We started this little gathering. It was just something very simple. It was like, come to the house. I'm making some sandwiches. Let's have some cigars and some scotch. And that just became tradition. Fridays, 1:00, you were at my house. We were having lunch and we were having cigars and scotch until the wee hours of the morning. And in that, my friends would say, hey, you should really open up you should do this for a living, like open up a sandwich shop. And then I would look at them like, guys, it's Friday. It's 1:00. We're having cigars and scotch. And you want me to start a business in the restaurant industry? You got to be crazy. But the problem with that is that if you give me a good idea, I'm usually the guy that implements it.
And enough scotch to loosen.
I say that because the truth is that I don't know what it is. It's not something that I can really pinpoint. There's this energy, this like stirring momentum that I just have to respond to. And I'm like, and if it's a good idea, I'm like, and no one's doing it, like, why aren't we doing this? And I just do it. So in my travels, I started developing financials, putting together, P&Ls and balance sheets and things that would, I think in the financial side of it, that would tell me whether or not this was a viable business. And the more I looked at the numbers, I'm like, it actually is. So to answer your question, Jennifer, it was a company called Meltwich. So I developed a company called Meltwich, and it was the antithesis of what we're doing now. It's open face sandwiches, kind of French inspired, very high level, really snooty, but very high level sandwiches. And it worked on paper. So I trademarked the name. I developed, all sorts of strategies. And I literally put it in a binder and put it away. And I said, I'll revisit this someday. Lo and behold, many, many years later, that was 2014. So yeah, it was about 7 years later. I open the file and I meet Rosa and I open the file and I tell her, hey, I'm tired of doing what I was doing. I got back into the work environment. Again, for some reason, every time I got into the corporate life, it always required me to travel. And it wasn't just like, occasionally travel. It was like, no, I'm gone. I'm not around. And it was too much for me mentally. And so I just wanted to take a shift. I say this often. It's like the only association I have to this idea is like that hedge fund manager that went crazy and wants to become a gardener, like totally off the rails, like growing tomatoes, right? That's what I needed to do. I needed.
Well, you said it, 180.
Yeah, not 360. I needed to turn around, which is why I say always facing the sun, because for me those were like dark. So I proposed it to her, and it wasn't very. How should I say this? It wasn't like she'd thought about it. She just reacted, which was that. Those are the things you have to, as a creative, those are the moments that you have to really pay attention to. Not the, let's put some thought into this, right? Because you get warped. But that instinct, she looked at me, she was like, well, that's great, but why don't you make it a Cuban sandwich? And I was like, oh shit, that's really smart. Now so she went off to work, and it really was like that. It was minutes, right, of like engagement where she saw this. She went to work, she come back, and I literally manipulated all of our P&Ls to reflect a Cuban sandwich. And I was like, this is brilliant. It works. And so that's when I got to work. And well, there's obviously a sequence of events that took us to where we are. But again, it's really understanding, like when we did it at the precipice of like an idea that happened so long ago. And I kept the name, and obviously, believe it or not, I actually sold the business. I sold it.
Meltwich.
Yeah, I built my pool. Like it was. Yeah, I sold some company from Canada decided to like. They had Meltwich over there, and they couldn't break into the U.S. market because I owned the trademark, I owned the website. So I'm like, all right, take it. I sold it, and I bought a pool.
That shows, a lot of times, to your point, it's that gut instinct, and it might not happen overnight. You have the idea, it sat on a shelf for 7 years until the timing was right, and that creative spark happened, and it shifted a little bit from what it originally was, but it was actually better. So thank you so much for that. So now get into, okay, so now you have this idea. You guys know you're going to focus on the Cuban sandwich. Where was your first location? How did you decide where to put it? How did you know how much space you needed?
I knew nothing. When you're implementing a strategy, I've been taught it's like walk slowly and carry a big stick. Tread lightly. Make sure that this is going to be a viable business, because despite all of the effort that I took to ensure its success, which was over a year, you still want to be cautious because so much is on the line. And I think in this day and age, I call it the microwave age. Everyone wants it now, like just now. I want to be an entrepreneur now. I want to be a millionaire now. I want to do this now. I'm like, you have no idea what you need to do to till the ground and get a really good lay of the land, water your crops, and let it grow. There's time, right? And so when we executed the idea, it's like, okay, everything's great on paper, and we got to make now a real financial decision to jump into this. We need to figure out what that strategy is going to look like to get us from point A to point B. And there are many strategies. This is not something that, I'm going to put a little disclaimer. I'm not responsible if you take this idea and it doesn't work for you. It worked for me. I understood what worked for me because it was 25 years of experience in understanding what takes a product from its inception and put it in the hands of the consumer. For us, it was, let's get started with festivals. Let's try one product and one product only. And let's see how the market responds to it. But if you're going to do it, don't do it half-ass. Don't half-ass it. Don't go to like the farmer's market. No offense to the farmer's market. You just don't have the volume of people there to dictate what the masses think. I had to go to a massive festival, and we did the Coconut Grove Arts Festival. And mind you, that you're talking 250,000 people. You're talking a massive amount of people. And there is where you have an opportunity to display your brand and your product. And see how that audience takes to you. And for us, it was just like it was like in Spanish, it tocó. It's like boom, right? And I remember telling Rosa, and a lot of it comes with, I talk about the essence and that little entrepreneur spirit. And something happens when you've worked so many years to develop these skills, and that intuition, they collide. And you're like, I got it. I know what we need to do. And you can't teach that. That's not something I could teach. It's just you develop that skill set over, for me, it took me 25 years. And when we developed the brand, at that point, I remember looking at Rosa and telling Rosa, hey, babe, we've got something. And someone came up to me and says, hey, where are you in Miami? It's like, we're opening up a location on 17th and 8th Street. And Rosa turned around and says, what are you doing? And I was like, I need you to listen to me. And this is true. You can invite her on another podcast and independently from this.
Oh, we will.
And she would, yeah. And I said, just follow my lead. I need you to verbalize this. We will be in Calle Ocho on 17th and 8th Street in September. Just do it. And man, divinity universe kind of responds, and we were able to open. But we were able to open on 17th and 8th Street. Exactly what we said in September, like we said, at the expense of a lot of grit and a lot of pain and understanding what the market and how we adjust to that, because there was a development phase from the time that we were at the Coconut Grove Arts Festival in February to opening in September. It was multiple festivals, multiple events, understanding how we're going to produce, how we're going to execute, and then executing the brand to our abilities. Not opening up a 7,000 square foot restaurant. No. We opened up a facility that was 160 square feet, and that's what we could manage. That's it. That was our bandwidth. It was our ability to say, let's do this at a minimal cost, right? With the greatest amount of upswing and within our capacity to do it. It was just us two. And that strategy worked. We went from a tent, doing one product in February. Then we participated in at that time, it was the Miracle on Alhambra. It was 2017. They were reconstructing Miracle Mile, and they had to move that festival into Alhambra. So that was our first event. And we had an incredible a spillover from Coconut Grove Arts Festivals. They're 2 weeks apart. And 7:00 in the morning, we were getting lines. The tents weren't even up. People were like, we couldn't eat at your establishment at the Coconut Grove Arts Festival. We want to come here and be the first in line. And it was wild to see. And I looked at Rose. I was like, we got something. Now it's just, I always say that the moment you make a decision, you have to respond to its momentum. And we made a decision. And now the universe is just giving us these challenges that we have to just attend to on a daily basis. You have your goal, and then you have all the sequence of events that lead you up to that goal. And we were just kind of like all this little interficial fat and all these layers that led up to the company that we've developed. But we've done it at the expense of patience, walking slow, being organic, understanding our bandwidth, and growing to our capacity, to our abilities. We ensure that we're no longer that little pot, that little plant in a pot, that we're in the ground. We're firmly in the ground, and we're developing roots. Because that's really the only way you can develop a company.
I think this is the reason why we really wanted you to join us in this commercial real estate podcast, because we often sit with people that they are well prepared in their own rights. They have great backgrounds, great pedigree. They have capital, and oftentimes they don't have a real clear business plan. They don't have a real big approach, and sometimes they take too big of a bite of the apple without being ready. And so, for the audience, I want to say, follow this trajectory. It starts in first in a festival big enough to really understand if there is going to be demand, right, and how the product is accepted, right. Then you go into a container, a beautiful container that you build for 150 square feet, where you're really maximizing that ability. Then every square inch. Then you have your first, brick and mortar physical location. Now you open, your second location, Coral Gables. You have other locations that are under works, and I think it's important for people to understand something that I think it's a universal thing, and I think you could speak to this, which is that sometimes you tell the universe, "This is what I want," and the universe tests you. You get a barrage of obstacles, and you almost have to now prove to the universe, I really want it. And
yeah, it's almost like saying, God, give me strength, and all of a sudden he like hands you barbells. And you're like, this is not the type of strength I was talking about. He was like, well, you asked for strength.
You have to be specific.
Yeah, but I think it's that irony of life, that when you do put it into the universe does respond, but it is to test your ability. And Fernando, I will say this time and time again: money will never ever outperform my grit. I don't care how much money you want to throw at it. I've seen money be pissed away because you don't have the right leadership and you don't have the right desire and purpose as I do. So I think that when people go into business, they have to understand that work is as much a source of dignity as it is a source of income. And that purpose should always be a driving factor to reach your level of success. My level of success is not popping champagnes on a yacht. I don't consider that success. I consider that an Instagram post. My level of success is being able to build legacy and to be able to build all these purpose drivers for me. It's a personal thing. I want to grow my business for me because I think that what we have is special and I want to share it with the world. It has nothing to do with money. Money is not part of the equation.
It's a byproduct.
Right.
It's a product. It's a product of what I'm building, but not my.
It's not
my motivational fact. It's not my motivational factor at all.
Right.
We often talk to our agents and we say, "What's your big why?" If the why is not big enough to motivate you when you are overcoming obstacles, when you're confronted by them, then success will be elusive.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if money is their goal, there's a reason for that money, right? What is that money for? And then you find what the real why is. It's to put my kids through college. It's to be able to start a philanthropic project or whatever. So let's tie this in a little bit more now with the actual real estate. So you did what we always ask people to do. You had your business plan, you had your financials, you had proven the concept. So already you can go to a landlord with stuff that they're looking for, even though you have no experience in this particular field. So tell us a little bit, what did you think of your first lease and how did that negotiation process go? Were there things in the lease that you've since taken out of based on your experience there as you've moved forward?
That I will say that's a learning curve, and I'm constantly learning because there's just now so many legalities to a contract. Contracts now went from 5 pages to 75, and so I'm glad that we're on this topic, and I took this opportunity to jump on here because I feel this is the one of the areas in specifically my business that can make or break you, and if you're not prepared for it, then what you wind up doing is working for the landlord. And I always say that every relationship needs to be equitable. Without their equality, where the landlord plays landlord role and the tenant plays a tenant role, and you both have an agreement that is equitable for both, is when you have a profitable relationship and a profitable business. At the very beginning, it was 2018 when we went into Gaiocho. So I kind of got really lucky with that location. It was way outside of my comfort zone with cost. Let me first preface this that, we're fiscally responsible. We make sure we wouldn't be able to build this. I'm in a 6,000 square foot facility. Fernando knows it really well. And we wouldn't be able to do this if we weren't really responsible. I'm not driving a Lamborghini and I don't live in a mansion. We're very modest with our lifestyle, and we make sure we protect the financial integrity of the business. And in order to do that, you have to understand your P&Ls. You have to understand your business. You have to understand your price points. You have to understand your costs. For you to make a decision on whether or not a lease works to you, for you, or against you. And so when I approach a landlord, I make sure that there's a clear distinction between the two. And we talk all about the whys, right? My why is my purpose. My purpose is to build a legacy, to build a big company, and I'm not going to do it at the expense of a landlord that wants to put his hands in my pockets. There's two very distinct roles in that space. A landlord is a landlord, a tenant is a tenant. The moment the tenant becomes the landlord and the landlord becomes tenant, there's emulsification in it. Like everyone wants to be, it gets really wishy-washy. So I always approach a lease as saying, listen, here's where my projections are based on reality. This is what we produce. This is what we do on a daily basis. I'm unable and not willing to pay any more than this. I don't care if you want $90 a square foot. I know the value that we bring, the proposition that we bring into a center. I understand who I am as an operator. And I can guarantee you, if I had a 20-year lease, I will never miss a payment. So many times you have to really draw the line in the sand with the landlord and tell the landlord, hey, here's my P&L. This is what my performers look like. I'm going to pay you 5% of overall earnings. Done. Triple net, all in, and here's my 2-3%, year over year, and what that means to us financially, and this is going to be my cap. If you like it, you like it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, right? This is where my why comes into play, because you're not going to compromise my purpose and my ability to do what I need to do to grow the company. Either you're part of that narrative and we can do it together, or you're not.
So let me ask you, because I think where you are now today and with the following and the proof of concept and everything, people want you. So now landlords are probably looking for you, right? But with your first lease, you didn't have that, right? You just had the concept. So, or were you still that adamant with your very first lease?
We had a North Star, right? It wasn't as defined, but we knew that's where we had to go. And I had no idea how much we were selling. So everything was very hypothetical. We had some baselines when we were doing the container, but unfortunately that was ripped from us for other reasons, which we can go into later. But everything was just based on hunch. So it was really difficult to negotiate our first lease the way I negotiate my leases now, because it's still very touch and go. It's like, yeah, I think we can do this. I think we can do that. What are you comfortable with? And so for me, it was like, I'm comfortable paying $3,000 a month. I can do that. There's no mad science. It's just like, I can do that. Right. And we were able to fulfill that promise. And that's when the learning began. At that point, I got much more involved with trying to open new stores and reading contracts and familiarizing myself, and then consulting with people like Fernando. What do you think about this? Consulting with attorneys and consulting with friends. Hey, I'm not afraid of asking questions. I don't know it all. I think it takes a community, and it takes. I put my ego aside and saying, I don't know how to do this. I need to hear it from a committee, from advisors, people who have it's well within their wheelhouse to say this is right and this is wrong. And so in that passage, I was able to develop, a sizable skill set to say what feels right and what doesn't. And now you're right, Jennifer. Now we do have opportunities, but these opportunities come at an expense, because now landlords understand what you're doing and the importance of what it is you're doing and the value it brings to a center, that now it becomes much more of a conversation about price per square foot. Now they're like, well, can we dump into your, put my hands into your net profits? And I'm like, this is where there needs to be a division of church and state. So I'm much more forceful on how I manage our business. And I think that my recommendation to anybody listening to this podcast is, first, really understand your numbers. And if you don't, you have to be comfortable with knowing what you feel that in the event things go wrong, you're able to afford.
Danny, how much of that level of clarity about the leasing side of things, how much was that influenced during the period of COVID, and how incredibly affected the restaurant industry was, and your own restaurant, during that entire process? Did that redefine or brought into a closer focus some of the concepts that you already had in place?
Fernando, September 17th, 2008 was the day that I learned a very valuable lesson, which was a lesson that I needed to develop a cash pile to help me withstand storms. And I was too young and naive. And I was on the top of Mount Everest, and things were good. And I was spending a lot of money, not just for myself, but just into the business, but at a rate that wasn't sustainable. So fast forward with Sanguich, when COVID hit, every decision I made led up to a situation that protected the business. Mind you, I was renting a house. My wife and I were driving, a Kia Sorento. We were making money, but we understood that there needed to be a cash cow in the event something happened. And it was just like one of those things. COVID happened, and when that happened, the decisions I made to ensure that we had a safety net and that we negotiated and understood what our abilities are, what I can do, were safeguarded. And one of them is the rent. So when COVID hit, we had a cash pile. Rosa was very nervous. She was frazzled because she hadn't really been through that experience the way I had. And so when that hit, I was like, "Ro, relax, we got this. Let's not overreact," because I overreacted in 2008. I overreacted. It was chaos. It was just like flying a plane without a rudder. It was just a downward spiral. And I understood that now I've built a certain level of maturity and clarity and saying, okay, let's relax. We've got some money. I need everyone to go home for 6 weeks to chill. We're going to pay our rent. We're going to pay our payroll. Nothing's going to go away. Let's just give ourselves the opportunity to understand the damage that this thing is causing and what we need to do to overcome it. And so understanding your bandwidth, understanding what financial decisions we had to make at the very beginning were always very clear to me.
I love it because it's usually her calming you down.
100%. She is. But in terms of, this is 100%, that is an accurate statement. Okay? I can't add to that.
Yes, sir. Leave it like that.
I have a painting by Oman Corrales. He's one of my favorite Cuban painters. He's here in Miami. And he's an incredible human being. And I have a huge painting in my living room. And it's a woman. She's Salvador Dali's wife holding. She's calm. She's looking into the clouds, and there's this beautiful ray of sunshine on her face. And she's calm. She's tranquil and serene, and she's holding a head of Dali, and he's like this, right? And it is an accurate representation of my life.
That's awesome.
Accurate representation of my life.
So you've gone over a lot. We always learn, I think, the most with our first whatever. And so were there any obstacles that you had to overcome with your first location? And then jumping into the next topic, which you've covered a little bit about, I think, is that given the current market, there are a lot of restaurants that are closing. You read headlines all the time. They're super well known, well beloved, but they're closing. They just can't make it. And you touched a little bit on that. But if you can go over what you think some of those reasons are, what a landlord can do to entice a successful concept, how can they work to ensure you're successful? I think you touched on that a little bit with the lease. And then are there issues that government or local officials can do to help or hurt your business?
That second part is a heavy question. Well, let's talk about what I feel other operators may or may not be doing. I can't speak to them because it's a really sensitive subject because there's just too many complexities when it comes down to operating a business. But I will say this: I think choose your partners wisely. I think that's first and foremost. So when you're going into a business, whomever they are, choose your partners wisely. Because partners can destroy a business, and I don't care how successful they are. Everyone's got their own selfish interests in place. But if a business is pure and it's clean, what I would say is that a lot of the failures come because these operators are not financially fit. They don't have the business acumen side of things. Many of these chefs, these entrepreneurs that go into the food space, they're so concerned with the food that's on the plate, and they lose their peripheral. They lose their ability to understand how to manage costs and how to get the best experience possible while protecting the business. And I feel what happens in the marketplace is far too often that people go into this business without really understanding business. They feel that they have a great idea and they can execute it, but can you really manage it? Do you have the dexterity to understand that if fish goes up 10%, what does that mean to your cost of goods, and what does that mean for the rest of the operation? And until you have a solid understanding of how to manage money and how to manage the expectations, I think that's your true success. Because I can have lines all day long outside. It doesn't mean that I'm profitable. It was up to me to make that profitable. It was up to me to build in the efficiency drivers to make me even more profitable. And that's an operational thing. That isn't about popularity, because, far too often we've had our favorite popular restaurants. We love going to this place and they're out of business. A lot of it isn't because of lack of support. People are there. But when times get tough, does that operator have what it takes to withstand that trough? We go through it all the time. I'm going through a slump right now. We're down 5%, 6%. And in the grand scheme of things, you have to understand, we're a sandwich shop. I don't sell alcohol. I don't have these other department and these drivers that are very high margin to help us coast over these bad times. I have to ensure, as an operator, that my business is protected in the highs and the lows. And so I have to invest in that process. I have to invest. And I think far too often people don't understand what it is to invest in the process, because when times are good, they take the money and they, do something else with it. Whereas I take the money and I reinvest it into my business, so my business can sustain its growth and sustain, when times get a little bit, tough. That's what I would say to that, in that regard. I think as a business operator, you need to really understand finances is everything. I can tell you how much I am making my ham for to the ounce. And until you know that, I don't think you really understand your business.
One of the things that is amazing about the experience of Sanguich in Miami is, number one, that everything is made from scratch, from the ham to the mustard to the pickles. I mean, I know I'm going to get an incredibly, bespoke, experience from beginning to end. But the thing that always first attracts you, right, is the eye, right? The design and the artistic aspect of it. And years ago, I heard an interview. They were interviewing John Travolta, and they were asking him about his experience filming Face Off with his very famous co-star, and he says that the thing that he taught me the most is to live life as art. And when I think of that statement, I think of you, Danny, right? And when I walk into your restaurant, I almost feel like I'm walking into a part of your brain, like this is the way that Danny sees the world. Talk to us a little bit about the design and how important that is to the overall, how much of a driving factor that is for you in the creation of this, beautiful child that you have built, but also in everything that you do in your day to day.
I don't know where it comes from, Fernando, but I just always feel that authenticity is the best form of expression, and I'm authentic in nature. Like I don't pretend to be anything other than I am. I know what I know and I know what I don't. And so when you walk into the space, it's my job to transport you into my space. It's my job to transport you out of your experiences with other restaurants and into a space that takes you somewhere. And for us, because we're our Cuban sandwich shop, it was really important for me to create the adjacency between the concept and the experience. So when you walk in there, you feel like you're in, I don't know, Old Havana. You've got this elevated experience of like Latino, right? Not necessarily Cuban, because there's could be all interpretations of it, but there is essence. There's something there that says, wow, this is a beautiful space. It isn't a polished concrete floor. It isn't reclaimed wood walls, and it's value added, not only for the consumer, but for the landlord, right? Which is what we're talking about here. We're talking about the relationship between one and the other. And I think that I want to touch on all the senses. I want to touch on your on the sight and what you hear and what you smell and what you taste. I believe our brand strikes an emotional chord. And it doesn't matter where you're from. You can be on the opposite side of the world and it still speaks to you because it's honest. It isn't anything but honest. So I tell my friends all the time, those that I love and I care about, always be the best version of yourself, even in the worst times, because we're human and we make mistakes. But it's the understanding that You need to display who you are at all times as best as possible. And so when you walk into my space, it's clean, it's orderly, it's energetic. And I think that if you really break down those qualities, if you put it on paper, it represents me to some degree. You know, it represents who I am, and I don't compromise on it. I don't compromise those aspects of it, because it would be compromising who I am as an individual. So it will always be clean. It will always be designed. It would be always high OCD. It will have music playing, and it will have the best Cuban sandwich in the country.
Awesome.
So, Danny, I know we're getting here to the end. We're taking a few more minutes of your time, but would you tell us a little bit about? Go ahead.
I really wanted to answer Jennifer's question, and it's a long-winded answer, Jennifer, about what our community leaders can do to help encourage economy, encourage entrepreneurship, protect its spirit, and the, you know, for lack of a better word, I guess, the gentrification that comes with the developments of cities, which I agree with and I disagree with. But I think that for the most part, you know, the community leaders need to understand what it takes for a family like me to develop what it is that we're doing. And without getting too much in detail, you know, we went through very difficult times at the expense of someone. And the city must...
Someone in a position of power.
In a lot of position of power, that nearly destroyed us, but he didn't. And what I will say to that, Jennifer, is that there needs to be a dialogue between the small business community and your municipalities to be able to strengthen the city, strengthen and empower these entrepreneurs to develop their businesses, respect the law, and do everything that's possible to ensure that the safety of the public, because it's a hybrid responsibility, not in terms of the structure, but the food that we're offering, but to provide a least path of resistance to execute economy. Because again, it comes down to being equitable, right? The longer it takes for me to open my business, the worse it is off for the economy, just in general. I'm unable to participate in that ecosystem. I can't employ people. I can't buy from vendors. I can't establish my own wealth. I can't go buy goods and services. And it restricts a business's ability to exercise itself and let the markets dictate whether or not they're successful. So I will say that the politicians and people in power and municipalities really need to shape up. I think they need to really look inward and put themselves in the position as if they were the entrepreneur starting a business, and ask that, and they themselves have to ask the questions, what we need to do better. Because I do it with my employees all the time. We have, every now and then we screw up, right? But I feel we have the best service that you can find within a sandwich shop. And I'm willing to put that toe to toe with anybody in the country. We are a sandwich shop, and we give you the service of a 5-star restaurant. Because I express to my employees, we don't train them. I just simply say, let me ask you a question. When you walk into a restaurant, how do you want to be treated? End of story. And everyone naturally puts themselves in the position of the person purchasing a sandwich. They provide them with hospitality, not service. Service is transactional. It's very easy. You buy, I give. Done. That's my service. I don't know you shit. Hospitality, that is different. That's when I really give you what you expect. And this is what I mean by putting yourself in the place of someone who's literally putting their entire livelihood on the line. Help them, don't hurt them.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that, because we always see the effects of either bad decisions or maybe decisions that were made for the right reasons but are having the wrong effect when we're representing buyers and owners and tenants and landlords that municipalities require. And I loved hearing it from an actual entrepreneur user. And
I also think that, really at the heart of it is authenticity. I think you really drove that point. And that's so important, because we're finding that a lot of operators are looking to create we have to create an Instagram wall, and we have to create, a place for people to be able to showcase in social media. But it doesn't grow out of authenticity. It just grows out of, I think I need to have it. It's in a checklist.
It's following the herd. I mean, if I did that, I'd have salad bowls, and I'd have strawberries and yogurt. Like, it's the truth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have it all the time. I have people coming to my restaurant. Well, I'm gluten free. I'm like, Mama, you came to the wrong location. I'm a Cuban sandwich shop. Like, oh, you have almond milk? No, I don't have almond milk. We're a Cuban sandwich shop. You want almond milk? Go to Starbucks. And it's okay to say no. And it's okay to say no and protect your why.
Yeah, I love that. The president of Viking, and I can't remember his name, but he says it's important. It's almost more important to know what you're not than what you are, and to stand by it. And so I love what you just said.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for joining us. We always end our podcast with a stat, a relatable stat, and I do have to say that it's always Jennifer, my partner, who bails me out when it comes to these stats.
Okay.
So, Jennifer, you want to end it with what's the stat of the podcast?
So I'm going to combine sandwiches and the Olympics, because we just had the Olympics, and this actually came up. According to a New York Post article in April of this year, Americans eat enough grilled cheese to fill 900 Olympic swimming pools. Florida says the bread needs to be heavily toasted. So I don't know if your sandwiches have heavily toasted bread.
They're toasted just perfect.
But I think
they're toasted enough. And grilled cheese, we consume. Okay, that stat one more time. We consume
enough
just the United
grilled
States.
cheese sandwiches just in the United States to fill 900 Olympic swimming pools. Like that picture in
daily,
my head. Like,
hold on, but I gotta ask you the question: is it daily or is it yearly?
Yearly.
That's a good point.
There's 300 million people, folks.
I thought it was funny, and don't worry, you're safe, because almost everybody thinks that the best place to have a grilled cheese sandwich is in the privacy of your own home. So don't worry.
No different. No, but let me say to that. I will say this. They feel the same thing about a pan con lechon. Everyone makes the best lechon in their house.
That's so true.
Can't dispute that here in Miami. Anyway,
Danny, guys, I don't know if you wanna say a little bit about what's next for Sanguich, and we could end it there.
I have this huge aspiration. We want to grow the company, and I want to do it at a ferocious rate, because we've invested 3 years into the engineering of the front and back of house. So I feel like we finally have passed that glass ceiling and are now having conversations on a national platform. So my job in the next 5 years, I want to be able to open well over 300 stores in the next 5 years, and be able to do it, at the pace or along the pace of the largest national chains in the country.
So that would be franchising?
That would probably be a combination of the two.
Good to know. Great to know.
Well,
that's my goal.
Awesome. We look forward to seeing where you go. We know it's going to be just up.
Absolutely. And listen, we could be talking here for hours. You're amazing.
We really
could.
You.
We really could.
I really appreciate that.
But that just means that first we got to get Rosa on board.
Yeah.
Because if you love Danny, wait until you meet Rosa. All right. But
and she's a lot prettier than I am.
All right, my friend.
She's smart as a whip, and you're going to be glad to have her in between two chairs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
That will be lovely. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you listening in. We appreciate all the feedback. Remember that we just launched our YouTube channel. This great interview, not only will you be able to hear it anywhere you get your podcast, but you're going to also see the video in the YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. There's nothing like seeing the energy in Danny's face when he speaks about something that he's passionate about. So it is a must listen.
If you're in Miami, go to Sanguich. If you're visiting Miami, go to Sanguich. And just for fun, if you remember where you heard it from, let them know that you heard it on Between Two Chairs. It would be kind of cool to see if it feeds out. But please, we always love recommending and supporting our local businesses, especially when they're such great friends.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Fernando, thank you so much, my friend. I love you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you, brother.
Bye.